Ventura. I'm a national organizer for Jobs with Justice, an organization leading the fight for workers' rights, rooted in the values of democracy and the belief that the economy should work for everyone. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers today to talk through what's at stake for our communities and workers during this time with billions of investments from our federal government. But before we get into that, I want to step back and provide some context about how we got here. Next slide, please. In 2022, the Biden administration, with a united push from labor unions and national organizations, passed several key acts to disseminate billions of dollars into workforce development, which included the CHIPS and Science Act. The CHIPS and Science Act invests billions of dollars into funding to bring semiconductor manufacturing back into the US as part of Biden's industrial strategy to, quote, revitalize domestic manufacturing, create good-paying American jobs, strengthen American supply chains, and accelerate the industries of the future. Next slide, please. Given this opportunity to strengthen workforce standards, build pathways for collective bargaining agreements, and ensure strong climate and natural protections, CHIPS Communities United was pulled together by the Communications Workers of America, Good Jobs First, the International Campaign for Responsible Technology, as well as other community leaders, to ensure this funding benefited people over profits, communities, workers, and the environment, not just CEOs and shareholders. Our mission is simple: to build a broad-based coalition that will ensure responsible and equitable implementation of the CHIPS Act, support communities with new and expanding semiconductor facilities, and combine the fight for workers' rights with the fight to protect the environment. Please join us, even if you have already signed our letters and our actions in the past, by filling out the interest form that we're going to put in our chat box. The only way to hold these mega corporations and manufacturers accountable will be to be building a powerful coalition, and that means all of us together. Now I have the honor of presenting two incredible leaders in this fight. First is Carl Kennebrew, president of IUE-CWA. President Kennebrew is the international president of IUE-CWA, the industrial division of the Communications Workers of America. IUE-CWA proudly represents manufacturing workers across the country and has a long history organizing workers in the semiconductor industry. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you, Mara. And on behalf of the CHIPS Communities United, I just want to welcome everyone to this briefing. I'm here today because we at IUE-CWA believe the CHIPS and Science Act has a tremendous opportunity to create high-quality union jobs, expand our domestic industrial base, facilitate opportunities for women and people of color, and ensure host communities prosper. I'm also here because we know the power and the communities have in the implementation of this law will determine whether or not the promises are realized. The semiconductor industry has a long track record of union busting, creating low quality and unsafe jobs, polluting the environment, and harming workers and their children, and also burdening host communities with significant problems. CCU's goal is to avoid the problems of the past and achieve a new higher standard of accountability as prioritized by the Biden administration by negotiating enforceable community voice for workers with companies receiving the CHIPS Act funds. Despite the industry's promise of the six-figure salaries, semiconductor production jobs are not the good family-sustaining jobs that host communities expect and deserve. Last month, the Department of Commerce announced its intent to award GlobalFoundries, a semiconductor company based in Malta, New York, $3.1 billion, touting the creation of thousands of good-paying manufacturing jobs. Now, this is despite the fact that the GlobalFoundries is hiring technicians at just $32,300 per year. Now, 30 minutes down the road in Schenectady, New York, new General Electric employees have starting salaries at 60% higher, with wages rising quickly from there. Why, you ask? Because they're union members with a voice on the job and the ability to bargain collectively. With billions of public dollars on the line, the rhetoric must match the reality. We need to ensure that the jobs created by our taxpayer dollars, our family-sustaining jobs, have been promised, and workers have a voice on the job, and that is how that will happen. We know at IUE-CWA because we have a long history of organizing and representing workers in the industry. IUE Local 8177 in Mountaintop, Pennsylvania proudly represents at one of the only union semiconductor fabs in the country on semi. We also represent workers at several semiconductor and supply chain shops across the country, and workers use the semiconductors to manufacture a range of products in the energy, defense, automotive, and aerospace sectors. We are actively organizing in this industry and have experienced aggressive non-union and union busting campaigns from companies applying for the CHIP dollars. That said, I'm proud to share that IUE-CWA recently negotiated the first peace agreement in the semiconductor industry with Cost Systems, which is a Black-owned semiconductor firm based in West Oakland, California. This agreement is game-changing and was highlighted by the Department of Labor last year as an example of how neutrality agreements like this can be a win-win for workers and for the companies. Cost Systems also negotiated a peace labor agreement with Almeida Building and Construction Trades, making it the only CHIPS applicant with union agreements for both construction and production workers. We are also partnering with Cost Systems on its workforce development plan and co-developing a high-role pre-hiring training program that will serve underrepresented workers in West Oakland community. Labor peace agreements for the permanent workforce, project labor agreements for the construction workers, and commitments around workforce development are all key elements of the community benefits agreements that we want to negotiate with semiconductor companies. We need more agreements like this one in the semiconductor industry, but it will take a coordinated effort with real investment to make that possible. And that's where all of you come in. Whether the return of the semiconductor industry will benefit all of us, or just as shareholders and executives, will depend on our collective voice and power. If we work together, neighborhoods of new chip factories, workers, union members, and environmental advocates and community livers, we can fulfill the potential of the CHIPS Act. So I encourage all of you to join this coalition and become formal members of the CHIPS Communities United. Together, and only together, can we ensure that the CHIP Act creates our jobs and communities that we need and deserve. Thanks.
Thank you so much, President Kennebrew. Your CHIPS organizing is certainly a model for all of us. Next, I have the privilege of introducing Ben Jealous, Executive Director of Sierra Club. Ben Jealous is the Executive Director of Sierra Club, the most enduring grassroots environmental organization in the United States. He previously served as President and Chief Executive Officer of the NAACP and is a proud former member of CWA. Ben.
Thank you, Ms. Ventura. Honored to be here with you, President Kennebrew. 30 years ago, I was crisscrossing the country with the then president of the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, in a desperate fight to defeat NAFTA. I was representing the Student Environmental Action Coalition then. And we understood that NAFTA would do what it did, lead to the shutting down of 63,000 American factories and the exporting of those jobs to countries that would not enforce environmental regulations if they had them. This is our anti-NAFTA moment. Along with the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are rebuilding American manufacturing to build the next economy, a green economy. The CHIPS and the Science Act is an opportunity to help remedy the short-sightedness of NAFTA, which caused so much harm to so many working families and planet Earth. So that's why I'm in this fight. But why is Sierra Club in this fight? Because semiconductors are the building blocks of the next economy, of this green economy, of the clean energy supply chain. EVs require twice as many chips as gas guzzlers. And not only do renewable energy technologies require these chips, we're honest, solar cells are literally semiconductors. That's what your solar panels are. Chips are essential for the clean energy supply chain. We also need their related raw materials for clean energy products. The transition to clean energy can and must be made here at home. Climate change and the fight against dangerous air pollution are too important to hope that other countries will do the work for us. We also need to build that next economy here at home and make sure that working families benefit from it. Inaction is not just a political liability, it is an economic one for our country. Trump and his MAGA allies are trying to slow us down every way they can. And if we're honest, the only entity that really benefits from that is the Chinese government. They already control 85% of the solar panel industry. They're aggressively seeking to dominate the EV industry. It may not seem possible now, but look at what they did with solar panels and ask yourself why they couldn't do the same thing here. Left unchecked, though, any semiconductor industry that we build here, left unchecked, will be highly toxic. Silicon Valley has more Superfund sites than any other region because of semiconductor factories historically that were not done in the way that they can be and must be done today. And to this day, the industry is tight-lipped on the toxic chemicals it uses, claiming they're proprietary. And that's why we're organizing. That's why we're part of CHIPS. That's why we're proud to stand with IUE-CWA and all the other unions who are in this fight, all the other groups of workers in this fight. CHIPS Communities United is working with groups across the country to put industry and government on notice. We want these jobs, but they must be good jobs. We want these investments, but companies must be good stewards of the environment, including their local community. We need transparency. The CHIPS law includes an $11 billion investment in research and development. Some of that money must be spent on making breakthroughs in the manufacturing of these products so they don't poison local communities, so they don't poison our environment. But how can we possibly make informed R&D decisions if the companies are not transparent about their existing shortcomings? That's why we need more transparency. Presenting a united front of community members, including labor, including environmental organizations, is the path forward. By organizing, we can force the industry to the table to sign legally enforceable community benefits agreements. And if we don't, industry will simply take tens of billions of taxpayer dollars, ship jobs overseas, and increase pollution. Thank you to everyone who's in this fight with us. The fight we intend to win. We have a lot of momentum on our side. So please stand with Sierra Club, stand with CHIPS, stand with the workers, go fight, win.
Thank you very much, Brother Ben and President Kennebrew, for outlining what's at stake, for sharing your vision and inspiration for action. You've set the stage very well for the next part of our agenda today. Hi, everybody. My name is Anibel Ferris-Comello. I'm based at the Labor Center at UC Berkeley, and I teach labor studies courses at the Goldman School of Public Policy. As my colleague Mara explained at the start, the purpose of this briefing is to bring together all the supporters of safe, well-paid union jobs with community benefits and environmental protection with the CHIPS Act. Most of you here today have signed the call to action last year. This launched the CHIPS Communities United Coalition, and this briefing is our attempt to expand and strengthen our network to build solidarity across organizations and geographies. You will soon hear from local leaders in communities concerned about new or expanding semiconductor facilities. But first, I'd like to share some updates on the status of CHIPS awards and CCU's emerging strategy, which you can shape when you join our coalition. First slide, please. The Commerce Department has issued 3 preliminary memorandum of terms, and due diligence has begun. In December, it announced $35 million to BAE Systems in New Hampshire. In January, the department announced a $162 million award to Microchip Technology for 2 sites In February, the department announced a $1.5 billion grant plus $1.6 billion in loans to global foundries in 2 locations. This is the moment for us to weigh in, my friends. We already know that the awards are problematic. We have been advocating for more responsive public policy. The coalition has already submitted 3 public comments on labor and environmental issues. Next slide, please. Member organizations, CWA and Sierra Club, have submitted an 8-page public comment to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, encouraging the inclusion of more detailed questions to be asked of the applicants for these taxpayer dollars in many different sections, such as resource consumption rates, effluent emission streams, and impacts tribal, historic, and cultural resources, solid waste management, hazardous or toxic substances, and so much more. In February, a draft programmatic environmental assessment was sent out on December 27th with a 30-day review until January 25th. CCU pointed out that this was a terrible way to encourage public participation. We asked for and got an extension until February 9th. 3 separate public comments were submitted by the CHIPS Communities United, plus 2 member organizations, namely the International Campaign for Responsible Technology and the Center for Public Environmental Oversight. This 12-page document, or multiple-page documents, recommended several principles that the CHIPS Program Office and NIST need to adopt for the final PEA. In February, the Notices of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, for commercial R&D facilities was also submitted. The public comment compiled by Jobs to Move America was submitted in February. This is not all. The CHIPS Communities Coalition has been very active in raising awareness among our representatives in Congress, and good news to report, 126 members of the Congressional Labor Caucus signed a letter to Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo last week on February 29th. We urged the Department of Commerce to ensure that the fund recipients utilize project labor agreements throughout the life cycle of a facility, sign community benefits agreements to include commitments to respect workers' rights to organize and pay industry-leading wages, and include specific measurable data on wages and benefits in contracts in order to receive CHIPS funds. There were a number of other demands that were placed on the Commerce Department to honor community interests. This letter was endorsed by the AFL-CIO, the Blue-Green Alliance, CWA, UAW, USW, IFPTE, and IBEW. This process took months, and we need to do a special shout out to Etana Jacoby, who directs the semiconductor campaign at CWA, for driving this effort with many others, many of whom are on this call today. Another letter that was signed and sent by Congress member Zoe Lofgren, who represents the 18th district, including Santa Clara County, where Silicon Valley is located. Congress member Lofgren sent her own letter to Commerce Secretary Raimondo last week on February 26th. And this holds a lot of weight. Her letter was strongly worded about previous conversations and letters she had written as the ranking member of the House Science, Space, and Technology Commitment. It highlighted the need to require the highest global standards for exposure, occupational protections, and monitoring and removing of toxicants when making awards. Special thanks to Ted Smith, Mandy Hawes, and the whole team at the International Campaign for Responsible Technology for inspiring this letter and Congressmember Lofgren's tenacious pursuit of our shared goals. Just yesterday, residents of 2 townships in Ohio sent a brilliant 4-page letter to Intel and a long list of public officials at the county, state, and federal levels raising their concerns about the environmental impacts of the new Intel fab being built outside Columbus. You will soon hear from one of the co-authors of this letter shortly. Now we'd like to turn to the coalition's mission and values with the hope that you will join us to raise pressure on our representatives. Slide, please. The coalition is guided by principles of racial, economic, social, gender, and environmental justice. When applied to the implementation of the CHIPS and Science Act, our coalition supports 16 specific principles that the existing member organizations have endorsed. Our norms include confidentiality, mutual respect, participatory representation, transparency, equity as a guiding principle, and an internal grievance resolution process. All of these are outlined in detail in the mission and vision statement that you will find linked in the membership form that my colleague Rand Wilson will tell you about as you are invited to join the coalition if you're not already a member. We wanted to share this federal work, but also say that our central work is at the local level, where we are building the power to demand CHIPS Act implementation that benefits communities, workers, and the local environment. Now we'll hear from a few voices of concern from impacted host communities. We have asked each of our 4 community comrades to answer 3 questions about their hopes for the new semiconductor facilities in their communities, their fears or concerns, and what they hope to gain from participating in the CHIPS Communities United. So that we're not accused of geographic discrimination, I'm going to keep a strict time so that each of our speakers sticks to 5 minutes. First, I'd like to invite Caitlin Ferrante, the Conservation Program Manager at Sierra Club, the Atlantic chapter.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. I'm based in Albany, New York. The Atlantic chapter is our New York chapter of the Sierra Club. There's a lot of interest in New York, federal interest, and from our governor wanting to make New York a semiconductor hub for the country and for the world, I believe. And our Central Northern New York group, the local group of the Sierra Club in the area, based in Syracuse, Rhea Jazer is the chair of the group and Don Hughes is the conservation chair. They've been working on ensuring that the Sierra Club and the community as a whole have a place at the table when discussing energy, water, toxics disposal, et cetera, at the proposed Micron plant in Syracuse, New York. So what are the opportunities in all of this? And I think we recognize that this is an industry that isn't going anywhere. Like Ben Jealous said so perfectly, this is, microchips are what are going to be helping us power our 21st century economy. They're going to be in our electric cars, our smart grids, and just our 21st century solutions in general. So we want to work with the industry, but also recognize that, we do have some concerns. But in terms of opportunities, we have an opportunity to make sure that we lead by example. It's a perfect opportunity for the microchip industry and for folks at Micron and others to focus on the idea of a circular economy, for the businesses to think about the full life cycle of these products, from the idea conception to the disposal and the manufacture in between, and all of the waste that's created. Thinking about that, how are we innovative? How are we less toxic? And just showing the industry at large that there is room for good actors and that the environmental community, labor, we can all work together with the industry to create a model for the 21st century solutions that we're looking to, to get to. So we're addressing concerns now and trying to clean up, and not trying to clean up and mitigate contamination 5, 10, 20 years down the line. A really good example of where we've already put pressure on Micron, the proposed plant in Syracuse, is that they have demonstrated that they want to power the plant with renewable energy. I think there was a lot of really good community pressure put on Micron to ensure that clean energy is what is fueling that plant. And we have to make sure, keep the pressure on, be vigilant and ensure that the energy is actually renewable. We're using solar and wind, not using false solutions that they identify as green or clean. So what are the threats? So from an environmental perspective, we're extremely concerned about excessive energy use and, of course, the threats of toxic chemicals like PFAS ending up in the drinking water. PFAS, or these forever chemicals, are found in things like nonstick pans, firefighting foam, etc., and are extremely toxic and are currently used in semiconductor production. So we should be working with the industry to ensure these chemicals don't poison our water, our air, our soil, our communities. In New York, we've legislatively banned PFAS from firefighting foam, food packaging, apparel, carpets, and we're working to get more comprehensive PFAS bans in place from all product sectors. And we can't stop this pollution to our air, water, and soil if we don't stop using these chemicals in the first place. We need to turn off the tap on these toxic chemicals. Other concerns of the Central Northern New York group that they've highlighted in terms of the Micron plant are land development, filling in of wetlands, energy usage, chemical issues. I know that they've been talking about advocating for a precautionary principle, which assumes chemicals are toxic and persistent until they're shown to not be. PFAS chemicals are super persistent and bioaccumulative, and we really need to be monitoring these for total organic fluorine. Also, Lake Ontario is a drinking water supply for Madison, Oneida, Oswego, and Cayuga counties. They all receive their water from Lake Ontario, and any proposed threats to drinking water sources like this, like that the proposed Micron plant, are things that the Sierra Club wants to work to ensure, the communities involved and that the drinking water supplies are protected. In terms of hopes of collaborating with CCU, we see this as a real opportunity to connect and share knowledge. For folks in Syracuse, New York, who are looking at the proposed Micron plant, they could connect with folks in Boise, Idaho, who are also dealing with Micron. And CCU can help us connect with one another, allowing to organize our expertise, help with technical comments, idea sharing, unifying our collective work so we can only be stronger, when we stand together and we don't have to stand alone. And lastly, I just want to lift up, this is a real opportunity to work and collaborate with labor. And I'm really grateful that, CCU has really brought these partnerships together and looking forward to the continued work. So thank you so much for the opportunity to express, all working on here in New York and in the Sierra Club.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Caitlin, and for sharing your vision also in New York. Next, we have Dylan Wild, who's an organizer with the United Auto Workers based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Good morning, everybody. I'm thankful to be here today at the invitation of CHIPS Communities United to discuss the incredible manufacturing boom happening right here in my home state of Arizona. And I would know, I can see the construction underway at TSMC from my mother's porch, the home I grew up in. Until I left to join UAW Local 509, I was a high school science teacher serving a predominantly immigrant and first-generation Latinx community. My primary concern as a teacher was preparing these students for the jobs of the future. I often spoke about companies like TSMC, LGES, and Intel, which at the time were making headlines with the massive tax subsidies and investment capital they were leveraging to bring manufacturing jobs to Arizona. Incredibly, they're providing high-tech jobs to both college-educated and non-college-educated students alike. I know for a fact that some of my students are pursuing their American dream by seeking jobs in these facilities, and I'm overjoyed that the work they'll be doing will contribute to building the economy of the future. However, my primary concern is whether these will be good, family-sustaining jobs that will serve my students for a lifetime. For instance, TSMC's work culture is world famous for being incredibly hard on workers and their families. There are even reports online of workers sleeping at their desks in order to accommodate their workload. How are you supposed to raise a family like that? I believe that any company, any industry that receives millions, sometimes billions in public assistance has a civic responsibility to offer world-class jobs and community benefits. To me, that means providing good union jobs. This is why I believe CCU has a major role to play in ensuring that these companies invest in the communities that have invested in them. CCU has a lot to offer our union in its mission to serve the interests of working-class people. Participating in coalitions around labor and environmental issues is essential to our organizing efforts. When we bring our voices and resources together, we can create the kind of public pressure that will ensure TSMC and other chip companies offer incredible jobs for workers. Together, we will ensure that the economic transition these communities will experience in the coming years benefits everyone. In conclusion, the manufacturing boom in Arizona, particularly in the semiconductor industry, holds great promise for our state's economy and the future of our communities. While we celebrate the opportunities this development brings, it's crucial to remain vigilant about ensuring that the jobs created are sustainable, equitable, and beneficial for all members of our society. Through organizations like CHIPS Communities United and collaborative efforts with companies and policymakers, we can work towards a future where economic growth is inclusive and where the benefits are shared by everybody. Together, let's strive to make our community stronger and more prosperous for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Dylan. We are with you all the way. Next, we have Jenna Baer, representing and co-founder of Clean Air and Water for Alexandria in Ohio.
Thank you, Annabelle. I live in the village of Alexandria, about 5 miles from Intel, Ohio. I own a micro bakery and I sell at a local farmers market. Licking County is home to the best producers and farmers in the state. And I like to design a different menu every week around the incredible ingredients I can find here, because there are so many of them. I heard about Intel about a month after my husband and I moved to Licking County, which was once voted to have the highest quality of life in the state. I kept hearing how great Intel was going to be for our community, and I wanted to be optimistic about what it meant for jobs in our county and to the overall economic situation of the state. But last year, my neighbors and I learned that our tiny little mile-long village of 500 people was about to be sandwiched between 2 asphalt plants, 2 concrete plants, and a booming trucking company on either side 1 mile apart. This would mean huge trucks, thousands of them driving through our town every day. 2 other community members had discovered this, and they distributed a flyer begging our town to speak up at the next meeting of the trustees. During the meeting, the trustees made it clear that they weren't going to address this. We kept waiting for public comment to open up, but it never did. So at the end of the meeting, people were leaving mad. So I started grabbing them as they left, which I don't know why I did. I'm so painfully shy, and getting any contact info that I could from them. So we started communicating via email, organized our first clean air and water meeting at our local library, and it was around 10 people. And now we have over 800 followers on our Facebook page, and also the overwhelming support of our neighboring community in Granville. Every participant had a different area of expertise. We had citizens who were studying zoning, environmental law, asphalt production, and even people like me who don't understand any of those things were able to help out by showing up to meetings and recording them so that we could share them with the people that do. Our goal was to keep this necessary industry, which was imposing itself on our town due to Intel's presence in our state, from effectively choking our small town, and locate somewhere more appropriate instead. We were very lucky to have found strong allies in our local soil and water conservation district. And if it wasn't for their timely investigation, as well as that of the Ohio EPA, we wouldn't have a lot of the evidence that we do of the offenses that were already being committed there against our water. So support your local soil and water office people. They do amazing work, and they need your help. At this point, one plant is backed out. They said they were tired of waiting for zoning violations, which we pointed out, to be remedied. And we actually found out in the meantime that the property had never even been issued an active mining permit that would have been needed to operate a plant there to begin with. The second plant is currently appealing our county planning commission's decision not to let them build in the floodplain while they have outstanding violations with FEMA on that property. So they'll hopefully be in court for a little while. Before all this happened, I really didn't give much thought to environmental issues. I think a lot of us here in Alexandria might be able to agree with that. But the more we learned in an effort to protect what we have here, which are pristine watersheds, American bald eagles, countless other valuable species, the better we got at thinking critically about the quality of our air, our water, and our overall quality of life here. Unfortunately, Intel is giving us a lot to be concerned about. We've always heard, and indeed some of our Clean Air and Water members were told by Intel's community representative, Emily Smith, that the reason Intel chose its location in Ohio is because the governor promised it could get all the water it needed from the city of Columbus. We found out this past year here in Licking County that this really reputable development firm that paved the way for Intel here has actually been looking for water in our community, in our town in Alexandria, since 2021, with no communication of those plans to our local leadership or to our community. This is an area where not only are residents' wells already going dry, but there's a Superfund site underneath our aquifer, which could potentially leach into our water supply if disturbed to the magnitude that Intel would require. Another concern we have here is for our infrastructure. Our fire department, which is the St. Albans Township Fire Department, is barely surviving. That's unfortunately the case for many fire departments here in our still rural county. Ours is going to have to pass 2 levees back to back just to keep in their current state of operation. Yet there's so much pressure on this community to grow immediately and exponentially. We don't know how they could possibly provide service to all these new people coming in. And we're really worried about how they are going to deal with an accident should one occur at Intel or within the New Albany Tech Park. The worst part about this is that Intel is keeping us completely in the dark, and our leadership is leaving us there alone. We as a community don't know what their plans are, and we don't have a say in these changes that are coming all too rapidly. So CHIPS Communities United has been sort of this gleaming beacon of hope for us because, we're just a group of neighbors from the next town over and the next, township road over. We may be able to stop an asphalt plant or two, but we don't deal with companies like these. We have no idea what to say or what to ask or what to do. Since being in contact with CHIPS Communities United, we've been able to meet with a toxics expert to help us understand the chemicals we could be dealing with here. We've learned what a community benefits agreement is, and we can't wait to learn how to negotiate that. We've already benefited so much from this organization. I'm hoping that through them, we can learn from other communities who've already been faced with these types of challenges and likewise share our experiences with those who haven't experienced them yet.
Wow, thank you so much, Jenna, for presenting what a battle you have on your hands. Folks, these are highly lucrative mega multinationals that we have been hearing about in New York. It's Micron, TSMC in Arizona, and now Intel in Ohio. These are not small players, and it is completely admirable and fantastic that Jenna and her core team are organizing on the ground. CCU is, of course, with you all the way. Next, we're going to hear from Ana Gonzalez, the Director of Organizing and Advocacy in Texas at the AFL-CIO.
Thank you, Annabelle. Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Ana Gonzalez, representing over 240,000 members of the Texas AFL-CIO, a union movement that is growing, that it's vibrant, and that it's on the move here in Texas and across the country. We are very excited for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to CHIPS Communities United for the invitation. I want to start with a little bit of history. Texas is home to an important victory in the semiconductor industry. A generation ago, Austin, Texas was home to Semitech, a partnership between the US government and 14 US-based chip makers. It was funded by the Defense Department to help the US rein competitiveness of the semiconductor industry. Unions, environmentalists, and many community leaders in Austin worked together with Ted Smith and Ren Wilson, who are part of CCU today, to demand that Semitech devote some of its research capacity to develop less toxic and more environmentally friendly chips. The campaign started with local Sematech management in Austin, but Sematech refused to consider altering the research narrow agenda. So the Campaign for Responsible Technology escalated its tactics and went all the way to the US Congress, where it won a 10% appropriation of Sematech's $100 million R&D budget for research and on more sustainable chip making. That was a significant victory that began here in Austin, but had national ramifications. But our work, it's not done. The industry is still very toxic, and there's still not enough voices for workers and the community. So my hope is that this federal investment would create thousands of excellent jobs here in Texas. Our state is home to 5 new or expanded chip manufacturing sites, each one costing more than $1 billion. 2 of the biggest are Texas Instruments, a proposed $30 billion expansion in Sherman, and Samsung, a new $17 billion facility in Taylor. When you add in a second Texas Instruments facility in Richardson's, Globitech in Sherman, and NXP in Austin, the total private investment, it's over $60 billion. The firms promise more than 8,000 permanent jobs plus thousands of construction jobs. If these are good quality union jobs, it would be a huge boost for our state. Now, we have concerns about the investments in Texas through the CHIPS Act. Will our taxpayer investment actually produce good jobs? The CHIPS Act, as we know, does not have wage or benefit requirements. It does not guarantee that workers have the right to organize or collectively bargain. But let me say this. In Austin, our community has demonstrated time and time that when big companies come to our city, they must commit to providing good and safe jobs for all workers. So to close, my hope from CCU is that our unions will continue to work with community partners and environmentalists. We all want to make sure that these new factories benefit our communities and keeps us safe. So let's build on the legacy of Sematech fight to organize powerful voice for workers, neighbors, and the community and negotiating with chip makers. Gracias.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Rand Wilson, and I just want to thank everybody for getting on this webinar Zoom today. We had about 100 people participating and a really terrific mix of labor, environmental, and community-based organizations. In particular, I think hearing from Caitlin and from Dylan, from Jenna, and from Anna, it gives you a real example of the kind of communication that we can have in this coalition. How we can bring people together from different communities to share information and help each other laterally, how we can unite workers in similar companies or in the same company to share their experiences and to build power. My name is Rand Wilson. I'm the organizer for CHIPS Communities United. Was involved in that Sematech campaign back in the day, and we used the federal dollars in that R&D initiative to get leverage and to be able to, create a conversation with the company and win real benefits. And it's our vision today that with the CHIPS Act and the enormous subsidies that these companies are getting, that we can begin the same kind of conversation with each of them. But that means building the power at the local level and bringing together the broadest possible coalition so that we can win. So we're asking people to join the coalition today. And I believe that Judith is going to drop in a form that you can fill out to join in the chat, and we'll also send it out to people afterwards. We want people to one of the benefits of joining the coalition, obviously, is you'll get regular email updates, have an opportunity to participate in Zoom meetings like this, and ones that are more targeted to, say, a specific company or to specific communities. We'll also, at the national level, have a number of working groups. We already have a research working group that has been convening very regularly, looking at the opportunities that the CHIP Act provides us. There's a tremendous amount of money in workforce development. So we've got a workforce development subcommittee or research or working group looking at ways in which we can shape the training that semiconductor workers are going to be receiving from community colleges and from other institutes in their communities. We don't want the semiconductor industry to be the only force shaping the training that these workers get. We've got an occupational safety and health working group with a lot of expertise and experience there. And then a group coming together around the federal advocacy that we need to do to ensure that the Commerce Department and Congress make these companies live up to the expectations of President Biden and his administration that want to see good union jobs and want to see our environment protected for the 21st century. I would invite people to consider scheduling a meeting with your group or with you individually, with either Judith Barish or myself from CHIPS Communities United, to make a similar presentation that you've heard today to your group at the local or national level. We want to educate people about the opportunity that this enormous federal subsidy and this reshoring of tens of thousands of new, hopefully good semiconductor jobs. We want to educate people about the opportunity that's in front of us, enlist people to help, and win some real benefits for workers and for communities. And I also want to really thank Mata and Annabelle, President Kennebrew, and Ben Jealous from the Sierra Club for getting on the Zoom today and filling us in on what's been going on. CHIPS Communities United. It's got a great name, and it's got an opportunity to really make a difference in so many of these host communities where these facilities are going to be located and where we can win the good jobs and the safe environment and the infrastructure that communities need to reshore this industry back to the United States and create tens of thousands of new jobs and bolster our economy. So it's an exciting opportunity to work together to achieve those goals.